I'm going to press that button. Life, death, and everything in between. Come and join us today on Uplift as we talk about navigating through the end-of-life process. Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to you. Thanks for joining us on Uplift. Whether you are joining us live or in replay, know that we appreciate you. I want to hear about your life today. In fact, we all do. So as we welcome our special guest in a minute, come on, sit down, grab a cup of tea, get to know the group. My name is Sarah Wade. I'm an art therapist and a lover of life. I'm coming to you from Perth in Western Australia. Mr. Neil Thrussell is my beautiful co-host. Welcome, Neil. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Sarah. And thanks for having me. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited. Spring sort of looks like it's trying to creep out in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And you're probably getting cold for you. It's probably 30 degrees now, freezing cold.
And something like that, absolutely.
And as Sarah said, my name is Neil Thrussell. I'm the co-host of The Uplift. I'm an author and a coach, and I'm really excited to have my friend and at various times mentor, Stephen Garrett with us. Welcome, Stephen.
Hello, Neil. So good to be here. Lovely to see you. Congrats on getting through your gallbladder ordeal in the hospitals and the Canadian healthcare system. And Sarah, nice to meet you. And I have some envy. I'd love to be down in Australia for a visit.
Oh, well, you're welcome here anytime, mate. We'll catch up and show you the sights. It's a pleasure to have you here. Hey, we've got people coming to, well, we all go through the life transition, right? So we're all born, we all die. When do people come to somebody like you?
Well, I wish they would come a little earlier, but most people come when the end is very, very near. So it leaves little time to build healthy, helping relationships, and it leaves little time to prepare for that final exhale. And most families are really unprepared, and so death can be dramatic mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, practically, all those leaves if we don't get enough chance to plan for it. That's one of my big wishes when I leave the planet, is that I've helped people plan well for something that is inevitable.
What do you mean inevitable? I'm going to live forever. I'm a superhero.
Good luck, Neil.
And yeah, it's teasingly, nobody gets out alive. And it can be like anytime someone is transitioning, passing, dying, whatever word you feel comfortable using, it is a stressful time. And for those that may be on the younger side of life right now, what are some of the things that they could do to help make sure that their life transition period is easier later on in life?
Well, I got two boys, Neil and Sarah. Their names are Oliver and Ben. They're either side of 30 years old. They both have cars and trucks and partners and dogs and money in the bank and assets. And they both work as commercial arborists. So they're in a risky industry. So I said to Oliver and Ben, I said, have you guys got your all ready to go binder started yet? And by an all ready to go binder, I mean it's a collection binder where you put your last will and testament, where you put your health wishes and not wishes, your advanced care directives, where you put life insurance policies, where you put your copies of your identification, where you lay out what you want your funeral to look like and what you want your celebration of life to look like. For example, One of my requirements is at my celebration of life, they will be playing Get Off My Cloud by the Rolling Stones.
I love it.
So the earlier, the better. And it may seem macabre to be thinking about end of life, but as you said, Neil, everybody ends up that way. I think being well prepared for the end of life is the most generous gift I can leave my family. If I don't leave well prepared, I've seen chaos ensue that actually tears families apart because mom or dad didn't have their will ready. Mom or dad didn't have their advanced care directives ready. Mom or dad didn't get organized for the end of life. Mom or dad didn't plan the funeral. Mom or dad didn't. And so all these details at the end of life, when we're in the emotional center of our brain and dad's just taking his last breath, then have to be made by the survivors, which is difficult.
Certainly doesn't sound like the best timing as you're going through that grieving process to be sorting out those little details. I'm curious from a family member's perspective then, is it obviously watching your loved one pass away, that's a horrific thing. When they haven't got all those things sorted, is there a sense of frustration leading up to the death that then continues after their death? Or is there something else that you've noticed?
What I've noticed, Sarah, good question, is with one client in particular, he had a 8 to 9 month terminal prognosis. He was dying of cancer. He had a wife and 3 kids, a business, trucks, cars, a house, all in his name. And he was 6 months from dying. And he was not a close friend of mine, but an acquaintance of mine. And I said to him, I'll call him dude, for lack of a better word. I said, dude, have you got your end of life stuff organized? You got a wife and 3 kids and a house and a business. He told me, stop talking about that stuff. I'm going to beat this thing. And so that denial piece really got in his way. I tried 3 times to help him get organized. He just refused. When he took his last breath, and it was now just his wife and his 3 kids and all the assets in his name, she had to borrow money from her family to live for 2.5 years as they went through the process of getting all this stuff ready. Was she angry? Yes. Was she angry at him? Absolutely. Was she frustrated? Yes. Was she confused? 100%. It made her life after his death really, really difficult, and it could have been prevented if only he had chosen to get all the ducks in order. She couldn't even get money out of the bank because all the accounts were in joint name, which means if he died, the bank accounts were frozen. So it was a real tough go. And that story is a lot more common than you would think. Here in Canada, I'm not sure what it's like down in Australia, but only half of us have a rudimentary will, never mind all the other stuff. So most of us—
Wow, that's a shocking statistic, yeah.
Most of us are not prepared to go. About 90% of us are not well prepared to go. And yet, we're all going.
Absolutely. And I know my father, my own interaction, my father has had health issues. He's had 2 heart attacks. And the last time we were in the hospital with heart issues for him, the doctor was very forthcoming and says, Mr. Thrussell, you have all these conditions, and if you flatline on us, do you want us to try to resuscitate you? And if you do, there is he listed all the possibilities of poor quality of life. And I was there and holding my dad's hand, and when he had to make the decision for DNR, and it was sad, but it was powerful, because in that case he had his will, he had everything lined up, but he had never physically said, these are the papers and this is where the will, everything was in a drawer, but he was not comfortable with anyone reading it and anyone knowing that, you know, he had this life insurance and this. But as soon as he agreed to the DNR, it was like, this is what and where everything is. This is my own personal experience.
Yeah. And you know, Neil, that's a very good point. It's one thing to be all ready to go and have your ducks in an order. It's a much more important thing to do is to sit down at the dining room table with your loved ones and talk about those end-of-life plans. I've got a binder. It's got all my stuff in it. It's 14 tabs of really important information. And I've sat down with my boys. And, you know, Ollie came in and he saw I called it my death binder. On the middle of the dining room table, he said, "Dad, what's a death binder?" I said, "Oh, honey, don't worry. We're going to have some pizza. We'll have a beer. We'll sit down and we'll talk about it." And just helped him settle a little bit. And then my wife and my in-laws and my two boys went through the all ready to go binder tab by tab by tab by tab. And so my boys now know all the details about how I want my life to end. They know that I've got a life insurance policy that's going to fly them to Varanasi, India, so they can toss me in the Ganges River at 5 o'clock in the morning. So,
and these are young boys. Are they really going to do it at 5 in the morning?
Yes, that's my wish. And they love me so much, they will. Now, the interesting thing about that story is we went through the all ready to go binder. And what it did for our family, especially my boys and I, was they realized and they recognized, oh yeah, we don't have dad forever. We only have him for a length of time. So I'm getting way more texts than I used to and way more phone calls than I used to, which is one of the side benefits of getting all ready to go. My boys know that I'm not around forever. They love me to be around forever. They love me so much. I love them so much. It's not going to be that way. So let's not waste any precious time. And let's spend more time together living. So that was one of the side benefits of the all ready to go binder.
Beautiful. So
when you're getting that bundle together then, Stephen, is it a case of, you know, making the final decision right away, or can you sort of put in a few options, or maybe, you know, if it's a rush situation, sort of say, no, I don't want to be cremated, or just have the don'ts in there at least, or when you start to put this folder together, which part would you explore first, or which part would you recommend others explore first?
Well, the first 3 or 4 pieces I would recommend are, let's get the will and the powers of attorney done. Let's handle the financial piece. And then let's handle the medical piece. Do I want to be resuscitated if my heart stops? What services do I want from the medical system? What services don't I want? And get very clear on those. And then get clear on, you know, life insurance policies and funeral arrangements. Some of those things I chose to be cremated, but I'm reviewing my choice. And now I'm thinking, no, I'd rather be wrapped in a biodegradable shroud and buried in a green burial site, because it doesn't put so much pollution up in the air as cremation does. So I'm reviewing and reworking some of the details about my end-of-life planning. And that's perfect to do. Every 5 years I go through it. Every 5 years it changes a little bit. And so that review is also very healthy to do.
Absolutely.
Neil, with you mentioning your father just then, had he transitioned like 5 years or 10 years ago? Had he changed his plans, or was it a sort of a combination of learning everything on the spot that time?
No, he had done his will. He had talked about his end of life care. It's just that he had not, like, he just physically not said to anything that I had a life insurance policy. So some of the finer details he just was not comfortable with sharing. And when faced with this could be it, his love for myself and my sister, my friend, went, holy crap, I need to get this in order and make sure, because it's so that it's less stressful. Like, he's got a prepaid funeral, and his ceremony, his plot is done. We know where he's going and all of this. So it's done. So he's been proactive, which is he learned from when we had to bury my mother 22 years ago. She didn't have a will, and she'd only talked with my father, so it was all the burden on him.
Yep. Yep.
And we were learning as we went to go, okay, what do you think Mom would want as opposed to a place for knowledge? And when I believe when we were in all this grief, it would have made so much difference had we known exactly what Mom wanted as opposed to us guessing.
Yeah. I remember, Neil, I was, when my father died in 2004, God bless him, he was in Toronto, I was in Vancouver, and my family never had any conversations like that. So I fly to Toronto, my dad's in the hospital, he's on life support, he's in all kinds of stuff going on. And the doc comes out and says to me and my mom in the hallway in the hospital, so what do you think we should do? Unplug the guy or leave him plugged in? And I said to the doctor, can my mom and I just go and sit like in a quiet place just so we can have this conversation? And my family never spoke like that. So I said to Mom, how bad is it? She said, well, it's bad. His friends come and they stay for 5 or 6 seconds, then they leave because they can't face death. Dad can't play cribbage. Dad can't have a rum and coke. Dad can't go golfing. Dad can't get out of bed. Dad's just like a vegetable. I said, well, all the things he loves to do, he can't. His chances of surviving are close to zero. What do you think, Mom? Should we just pull the plug and let him go gracefully? And I mean, what a time to make that decision. We both agreed, yeah, like it's the best thing to do. But there was this nagging thought in the back of my head, like, was it really? Is that what Dad would really have wanted? I think yes, 99.9%. I think so. But there's that little shred of doubt. And that's why it's so important to be clear and to have these conversations way in advance, so there's no surprises or shocks.
Makes sense.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. That's true, Sarah. But our fear of death and our fear of talking about death, our fear of confronting death, our denial of death really holds us back.
It's interesting, the different cultures, how they celebrate life. There's all sorts of elements that we can incorporate from all over the world. I love that our belief system can adopt things that sit well with us. Have you noticed any trends recently, Stephen?
Yeah, it's more and more in North America, which is one of the most death-denying, grief-denying cultures I've ever seen. More and more people are starting to realize, especially with the baby boomer generation heading out, that the great tsunami is coming. And so people are starting to reluctantly get ready. So there's a few more percentages of people with a will. There's a few more percentages of people that have advanced care directives. So it's starting to rise, but quite slowly. It took us a long time to become death avoidant and grief denying. It'll take us a while to undo that.
Yeah, one of the men in my men's group was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he chose to have a wake while he was still on this side of the grass. He wanted the party, and he asked everybody to dress up, and it was we were elsewhere. I was out of country last year, so I wasn't able to attend, but people said it was the hardest thing that they had ever done in their life, because they're used to showing up and saying great words to the dead body. But he was asking you to tell him the great words now so that he could go, so that he learned now what you really loved about him.
Yep. That's, when I was at my dad's funeral, I heard all his friends saying these lovely things about him. But my dad's dead, he can't hear. Why wouldn't we do a living wake? That's my wish. If I know I'm going and I'm leaving on, I don't know, a month from now, let's have a party. Come on over and let's talk and let's be with each other. Let's not leave anything unsaid. This is one of the things that's really difficult after our loved ones have died, is the things that were left unsaid. Now it's too late. Neil was mentioning about deathbed regrets. It's, boy, on your deathbed, it's a really shitty place, pardon my language, to come up with deathbed regrets, but that's what comes up. And better to come up then while the individual is still living, so they can give voice to their regrets, than carry it secretly with them to the other side.
Is there, in your experience, without breaking confidentiality to your past clients, is there a centralized theme that there's some people have more regrets around something than others? Is there more of a theme?
I wish I had have lived the life I wanted to live, not the life others expected of me, is number one. Number one, I wish I had have lived the life I intended to live, not the life others expected of me. Another regret is, and this was a truism for my brother when he was on his deathbed. I asked him, I said, Pete, got any regrets, dude? Anything you regret? And he said, yeah, I got two. Peter did a 6.5-year journey with cancer, a very long walk with cancer. His one of his two regrets was he treated his body like a garbage can. He filled it with chemotherapy and radiation, all kinds of drugs and chemicals. And he said, I just wished I hadn't have done that. I treated my temple like shit, and I feel lousy about it. And so all there is to say about a regret like that is just, hey, thanks for sharing. Not to join him in it in any way, just thank you. Thank you. Then I asked him, and this is another common regret. I said, so what's your number one regret, Peter? And when you ask a question and it's a really important question, how the room goes silent. Yeah, his hospice room went silent. And he took a deep breath. And he said to me, Stephen, I'm 61 years old. And I never really fully jumped into my life 100%. I always held 12% back. He never really gave himself fully to his life. And he used the number 12%. And then we both burst into tears because it was so sad, because he was dying that day. And there was no way he could live his life fully. It was done. And so that deep regret of not really jumping into his life full on 100% was his number one regret. And that's a regret I've heard spoken in different ways, but the same theme. I didn't really give my life my full shot. I wish I had. So those are a couple of the common regrets that people carry. And none of them have anything to do with money or assets or cars. They have to do with relationships and empathy and compassion and serving and being true to yourself.
One thing I remember reading in a variety of the things that I've studied, but also at funerals, was the being yourself just for 5 minutes a day, throwing caution to the wind, and just, we've all got our own version of the rat race that we're living, but just being you for just that 5 minutes a day or more, preferably, gives you that more joie de vivre and gives you that thing to go for and strive. I love when you go to funerals and you hear about, I just loved when Uncle John reached out to me, and we go, instead of saying hello, it's those little bits of memory that you can really savor. And I absolutely love that. I remember going to my dad's I'm Not Dead Yet wake. He was dying of pancreatic cancer, and he had people flying in from all over the world. He was a dragon boat man for the young and old. He had people from his swim team, and there was so many amazing conversations. And what I loved hearing the most was about those those little moments just where they've just grasped that time, and it's been this beautiful connection. And I'm sure that you've seen so much of that.
Yeah.
Have you got any suggestions, Stephen, as to how, if someone isn't already doing that, that they can start taking those few minutes to be themselves?
Well, I like the expression or the phrase, just in case. Just in case you got a year to go, just in case you got a week to go, just in case. Let's live with a little bit of reckless abandon today. Let's say to our loved ones how much we love them today, just in case. Because something that comes up after the loved ones died is, I just wish I had said I loved you more. I wish I had held your hand more. I wish I had been closer to you. And so just in case is a great phrase. Just in case we don't get to talk again, the three of us, let's have a great conversation this day, just in case. Because we know one thing for sure, we're all out of here. We just don't know when. So let's not delay having fun. Let's not delay having important conversations. Let's not delay saying I love you. Let's not delay having a great cup of coffee. Let's not delay doing a painting together. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Just in case.
So in the green room, I was trying to figure out how long Stephen and I have known each other, and it's somewhere around 23, 24 years.
Yeah.
And what I love about our friendship is that time can pass, distance can pass, but when we sit down in front of each other and we look into each other's eyes and we are present, that's all that there is in the world right here and right now for each other. And why at the beginning, why I say that Stephen was a mentor, it's because it's one of the lessons very early on in our relationship that Stephen really worked at cultivating in anyone that he touched. The other piece that Stephen, I don't know if you still do it, but he tries to learn all the people's names, like the barista that's bringing him coffee. He tries and he uses their name. So he spent to get to know the people that are in service and with service with him. So thank you for that gift, Stephen.
Yeah. It just recognizes the individual. And just in case they die before they see me my next oat milk vanilla latte, I'd like to know their name. Our names are so important. It's incredible. When I ask strangers their name, they look at me like, wow, thank you. Like they now matter. I oftentimes, when I'm in Vancouver, sit down with homeless people. And the first thing I do with a homeless person, I ask them their name. And they look shocked that somebody would do that. But they're an individual. They've got a name. And when we say each other's name, we call ourselves to the present moment, which is very important, just in case.
Absolutely. So I can say that I've known Stephen for various incarnations of his life, but how did you get onto this particular path? Because I know, for those that don't know, Stephen was a stockbroker, he was a social worker, but how did your life drive you to reaching this goal and this service opportunity for this gift of your purpose, your current purpose here?
Well, Neil, I think it was just what I came here to do. And to be honest with you, I was sound asleep in my life until the age of 39, when my sweet dear sister Jody died. May the 5th, 1988, Thursday night, 6:30. I'll always remember that phone call. And I just wasn't prepared for it. Like, it came out of the blue. It was a sudden, unexpected death that just knocked my socks off, thankfully. And Jody's death actually was what opened me to this whole career of becoming a death shaman, a death coach, a death educator. Because her death shook me so intensely that it woke me up, almost like Neo waking up in the Matrix. It felt a lot like that. Like, I woke up and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I've got a silk tie on and a vest and suspenders. Like, that's not me. But it's the life I learned to live based on what my uncle and my aunt and my dad and my grandpa did. But it wasn't my life. Jodi's death woke me up to the truth of who I am. And the work I do today is a direct result of her deep love for me and my deep love for her. We wouldn't be talking if Jodi hadn't died. Full stop, period. And so her death I took as inspiration. And instead of turning away from it and ducking and covering, I leaned right into it. I looked right at it, right in the eyes. I looked death right in the eyes. And it's changed my life because I've embraced my death. I've made death my friend. I've made grief my friend. Because grief and grief isn't a bad thing. Grief and love are twins, by the way. If you've loved somebody, you're going to grieve them. You can't get away from it. If you're grieving, you've loved. It's the same thing. It's like a sock. Like if you look at a really colorful sock that's got a really pretty pattern on the outside, it's like, whoa, that's love. Turn the sock inside out. It's a gnarly mess of knots and threads. That's grief. You can't have the pretty outside of the sock without the gnarly inside. You can't have love without the gnarliness of grief. And we need to befriend grief and befriend death. Make them our friends. Welcome them back to our homes. It's not the hospital or a hospice. Welcome death back to our home.
That's beautiful what you said, Stephen, because we don't know how deep we love till it's gone.
Bingo.
Because you pick anything in your life that you love. When it's gone, you discover the pits of how much you love that person, place, whatever that meant to you in your life.
Yeah. We're grief illiterate. We don't know the first thing about grief. We just don't know how to do it. We know how to suppress it. We know how to deny it. We know how to avoid it. We know how to drink it away or drug it away or eat it away or text it away, but we don't know how to be with grief in a way that honors the love we had for the person, place, or thing we lost.
And even if this is my opinion, even if we get a glimpse of it, we're afraid to embrace it.
Yes. Yeah.
We all know that, my friend Stephen is going to die. My friend Sarah is going to die. And and many people are ashamed to say that, I love you, Stephen. I love you, Sarah. They're afraid. And I can only encourage you to get out of your comfort zone and share that love.
Yep. Because you regret that you didn't. I remember when my dad died, Mom was sad she didn't hug him as much as she wanted to. He was busy and she was busy, but they never made as much time as she wanted for just a cuddle or a hug or a handhold. Simple little things. And she regretted that she didn't do that. What a great life lesson that was for me. So let's make more time hugging. See, if we hung around death more and we hung around people who are dying more, they leave behind their wisdom in their regrets. When my brother died feeling ungiven, I adopted a motto: live your ass off just in case. And I dedicated that motto to my brother because he had the courage and the kindness to share with me a regret of his. He's on his deathbed, so yes, it was a deathbed regret. I'm still alive. It turned into life wisdom for me. If we spent more time with people who were dying, they would download their wisdom to us. We could live an even more rich, an even more full, an even more amazing life. And because we push death away, we push life away too. Makes sense?
Have you noticed there's a bit of a sparkle amongst people who just come into the realm and people who are leaving when they get together? That sense of new and joy and expectation going forward, and the opposite end wrapping things up in their experience and connections. And Would you recommend that you foster that relationship more, like take the grandkids out,
Yes,
go to more community events? What
yes,
would you recommend here, Stephen?
all of that. We all live in a community, right? We all live in a street or a village or in a condo or a townhouse. We all have neighbors all over the place. When's the last time you've knocked on your neighbor's door and said, "Hi, can I take the kids for a while so you and your partner can have some fun?" When's the last time you helped a neighbor cut the lawn? I saw an ambulance at a neighbor across the street the other day, and I went right over and said, "Hey, dude, is everything okay?" He told me the story. Things weren't okay. But if we spend time touring our little village, because it takes a village, if we start to make villages instead of like a street, then we've done something. Get to know the kids, get to know the grandparents, take a risk, do something like I help people shovel their driveways because they're a neighbor. Wouldn't I want them to help shovel my driveway? Absolutely. Well, get out there and do it just in case. That's
Absolutely. And in North America, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in North America, somewhere in the 1920s, whatever, whether we became more affluent and we became busier, where we moved our parents to elder care outside of the home.
yeah.
And I think that's just even further driven the wedge and nobody, because I can't look after my parent. But we did it for hundreds and generations prior.
And guess what, Neil? We're going to have to do it again. In British Columbia, we have over 1 million baby boomers in a population of 5 million people. To service those 1 million baby boomers, we have 301 hospice beds in the whole province, and we have 28,000 long-term care beds. The wait list is already 18 months to get an elder into a long-term care home. Guess what? We're going to have to learn how to take care of our folks again. It's going to be necessary, not a choice anymore. It'll be necessary that we do that because the inn is full. The beds are full. And so healthy seniors are not going to have the opportunity to go to a long-term care home. They'll be full of folks who are struggling with dementia and Alzheimer's and all kinds of medical issues. So the healthy seniors are going to end up on the doorstep of their kids. I got that plan for my boys. I've already got them ready. Hey, boys, get that bedroom ready.
And affectionately, we teased my mom that she was going, when Greyhound used to be a bus line that would transport people between cities. We used to tease my mom that as her health depreciated, we would be sending her on the Greyhound by herself to the next city to the family. And she's going, and she just in good nature would say, as long as you send me with cookies, tea, and there's a bathroom in the Greyhound, I'm good.
Good for her.
Yeah. So it's all good. So besides, so what are I'm trying to formulate thoughts. So you've do this grief work, but I know you as an author as well.
Yep.
Is there a correlation? What are you currently writing? What have you written to help people in their grief processes?
I wrote a book. My first book on death and dying was called When Death Speaks, Listen, Learn, and Love. It's just a piece of philosophy on how we can learn to lean into death and what it has to teach us. My next book was called When Cancer Came Knocking, How One Family Answered. Because of my brother's courageous, brave efforts to live over 6.5 years facing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and all kinds of nasty cancers, I wrote a book about his passing and how it actually drew our family even closer together as we all rallied around to enjoy him in the last 6 years of his life. And my current book, which is in the midst of being published, is called Grief's Walking Stick, a personal journey from sorrow to service. In other words, how did I get involved in this crazy business of death and dying? Well, here's my memoir, that shows you how I went from death denying and grief denying into embracing death and befriending grief and learning how to teach about it. And so it's a good book. It'll be
You're really separating the two there.
Eh?
You've really put an emphasis on separating the two, death and dying and grief.
Yeah.
Are there stages that, I mean, we've all heard of the stages of grief, but are there stages that feel more poignant that people aren't really, picking up on?
Here's the thing with grief and the stages is everybody grieves differently. They have a different rhythm, a different tempo, a different timing, a different language. Sarah, you're an artist, so some people grieve by painting. I'm a writer, so I grieve by writing. Some people are very kinesthetic, so they grieve by dancing or walking or running. Some people are bakers, so they grieve by baking. Some people are more spiritual, so they grieve by ceremonies. And so there's no separation of any of that stuff. It's all just this remarkable bucket full of paintbrushes and palette full of paints that we get to play in. And the artistry is in recognizing that each one of us has our own unique way of grieving and our own unique timing, our own unique cadence, and that each of us grieve just in a very unique way. So it's grief coaching is actually a form of artwork, finding the right paintbrush for the right person with the right color at the right time.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, you're definitely talking my language there. In the green room, we were talking about how you use art to help people you work with to process everything. Do you mind just leaning into that a bit more from your experience, how art and art creation has helped both the family member and the person who's moving on?
Sure. I was working with a mom and her son who was 9. Dad had died of suicide. And so it was a real tough time for mom, and it was a real tough time for a 9-year-old boy. Mom was more of a talker and an emoter. And the 9-year-old boy he had his kind of head down. It looked like he was doodling. And so mom was trying to get him to look up and pay attention to me. And I'm wondering, what's the kid doing, And so I sent mom to get a cup of tea for a few minutes. And I said to the young boy, I said, hey, I called him honey. I said, hey, honey, what you doing? He said, oh, I'm just drawing. And mom didn't think he was grieving at all because he wasn't talking about it and he wasn't crying about it. So I said, oh, would you like to show me your picture? He said, would you really like to see it? I said, yeah. So he held up the picture and he was drawing with a pencil on a big, huge, it was about 10 by 12 piece of blank paper. There was a hill, and on top of the hill was a church with a steeple and a path from the front door of the church into the cemetery through the gates. And the path went right up to a tombstone. And on this big tombstone in the center of the canvas was the word Dad. Was that kid grieving? You bet he was. He was grieving his way.
Oh, yeah.
So I brought mom back in and I explained to mom what her son had taught me. And so I had her start to draw pictures for her son about how she was feeling. And he would draw pictures and then they talk about the pictures. So they became bilingual in their grief. And so it can be that simple. Just giving a kid permission to draw, or giving an adult, a mom whose daughter was killed by a drunk driver in New York City at 10 o'clock at night, permission to paint her feelings out, and then reading the painting back to her. It's that simple. It's not rocket science. We just have to be aware of the different languages.
Absolutely hear you. I think it's an important part of the process to express yourself your way. We've all abided by, to one degree or another, people pleasing rules, laws, boundaries with other people, this is your chance to express your you-ness and how you feel in the moment. Do it your way. I love that you mentioned the dance, or you can write, or you can talk, or just sink into the moment and be. That's what I've noticed is one of the most poignant life lessons from a lot of people. Just sink into the moment and be. Doesn't matter which stage of life you're in. Going forward, if you're noticing people who are starting to grieve in a way that you're concerned about, who would you contact? Obviously, this is a show that goes out worldwide. Is there a particular type of person or field that you would recommend, Stephen?
Well, grief counseling is becoming more and more common, and counselors are getting more adept at counseling grief. That would be my first suggestion. You know, there's some good videos out on what are the 7 signs I'm not grieving. Well, I'm over drinking, I'm overeating, I'm overworking, I spend too much time alone. You know, there's all kinds of signals and signs that we're not grieving well. If you see somebody who you're concerned about, it's a good idea to have a gentle chat, like, Neil, how you doing since your mom died? I'm just a bit concerned. I noticed you're drinking a bit more beer than you used to. You all right over there? It just takes a bit of courage to ask those difficult questions. Because for me, I think unexpressed grief spawns all kinds of behaviors that aren't helpful. Shopping, you know, any sort of addictive behavior that we intend to have us make us feel better. You know, a new dress, a new pair of shoes, a new shirt, a new car, you know, a new meal, something that we can get some temporary happiness from. When people start to do that, it's a never-ending kind of addiction, and it doesn't work. The only way through our grief is to embrace it and let it, in a way, surrender to the grief we feel, and let it use our body, our minds, and our expression as its way out. Because if it doesn't come out straight, it's going to come out sideways. And sideways means too much drinking, too much drugging, too much sex, too much porn, too much this, too much that. We'll stuff it. We'll stuff it down and stuff it down because we're out of practice of being with grief and expressing it.
I love what you said about us being brave, being courageous to ask. And really, that's taking the next step for the people that you love, the people in your community. Asking to take this step forward and be courageous, and from a place of love and compassion. Get to know someone, get to know them so that you can be part of their lives, to build this where it's not a really risky thing. It's just a place of where you feel compelled that you want to ensure that this person you love and care for is helped and is not suffering in silence. That there's places for them to be.
Hey, that old expression, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
If that's true, it takes a village to grieve well. It takes a village to die well. Where's our villagers? Let's go find them. On my street of 11 houses, I've knocked on every door and I say hi on a regular basis. And I'm doing it because I'm selfish, because, you know, I'm likely going to predecease my wife. I'm going to likely predecease my kids. I want them to have neighborly support when I go. So if my wife or my kids can't cut the grass because they're grieving, maybe a neighbor can. Or maybe a neighbor can bring the garbage can from the curb back to the house. Or maybe a neighbor can take the dog for a walk. You know, we need each other. And I think if we can take advantage of the baby boomer generation, it may well be the death of our boomers is a community development opportunity. I've said this to my premier here in British Columbia. I met him. I said, John, I said, I got this crazy idea that the death of the baby boomer generation might be a wonderful community development opportunity. He said, yeah, thanks, and went off and talked about the Vancouver Canucks or a football game or a baseball game, because he didn't want to talk about death and dying. It's so
Even
it's
as
so
a publisher.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was a politician.
Oh,
He was the leader of the NDP party here in British Columbia. He was in government, and he's in charge of 1 million baby boomers. You would think he would want to do something for him, but he just didn't want to do that. But he didn't see the opportunity that perhaps the baby boomer generation leaving the planet could leave behind. Just a different way to look at it. That's all.
Yeah, because just 1 million people, whether they're living or dying, history says that they're going to need more medical care.
Yeah.
1 million people needing additional medical care just puts a huge burden to an already overtaxed system. When sometimes, in my view, there are many medical things that people need help with, but sometimes just someone talking to someone is what will help them and lift their spirits up.
That's simple. That's simple. You're right. Hey, hi, how you doing today? Want a cup of coffee, a cup of tea? Can I hold your hand?
Yep.
Tell me something about your life you'd like me to know. Simple.
I suppose that's why places like the Friends Library have come about. You know, you don't have somebody yourself to talk to. Go to a Friends Library. I think there's Finland that does it, and there's a few other European countries that have started catching on.
Yeah.
So you can just go and chat at markets in different countries that are designed for just the elderly. So they're going there and they have genuine conversations with the person packing the fruit or doing the thing in the supermarket. And they're not there to stack the shelves quickly. They're more there to have that connection and to make that person feel special, get to know their name, you know, do all those things that can really make you feel that loneliness if you don't have that.
Loneliness actually will shorten the lives of an elder significantly.
Well,
Social contact will lengthen it significantly.
I think there's probably ample evidence when we look at COVID, and I know in North America, we locked our seniors up and put them in isolation. And how many did not survive the isolation? My mother-in-law, my wife's stepmother, did not survive isolation.
Yep. Loneliness is a killer. It'll shorten our lives remarkably. And all we have to do to counteract loneliness, say hello. Hi, Tom. How are you doing? Hey, Bill. Nice to see you. Hey, Sally. What's new? How are the kids?
Yeah.
Simple.
One of the beautiful things that Tina, my wife Tina, does is she puts on a t-shirt and it just says free hugs. And she is unbiased and unabashed. She will go out. It's easier when she's wearing the t-shirt because then they're not so surprised if she comes up to somebody. Can I have a hug? They don't think that they're looking for the local local mental asylum that what has she escaped from? But with a free hug shirt, people are disarmed and they feel like, yes. So she's out there a lot of times.
Yeah. And that's what community is. I mean, if you look at the word community and communion and communication, they're all linked. Community suggests that we should talk to each other. That's what the village is all about.
Well, I don't usually like to get into politics, but I love what Gavin is my friend Gavin. He's been on the show. He's teasing it about a politician. So welcome, Gavin, and thank you for watching the show again.
Thank you, Gavin.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the time, and I'm looking like we might be wrapping up a little too early, and we might not. So everybody I'm gonna ask them to think about what they'd like to share with our listeners and our viewers as we unwind, and we may come back because it's a little early, but some of our answers are a little bit long. So I'm like, okay. So I would I'd like to leave our viewers, our listeners, and whether you're listening to this on live or replay, however and whenever you're listening, get out into your community. Take a risk, take a chance, spread some healthy, vibrant love. Take an interest in your community.
Yeah.
Pick up litter, do whatever, and meet the people in your community. I love that Stephen is knocking, whatever regularity is, he's knocking on the door and talking to his friends. So go out and share the love. Be the love, embody the love. Stephen, what would you like to leave our viewers and listeners with?
Well, I don't know. My email address is embraceyourdeath.com. And that's a bit of a daunting request, but for me, that's what I'd like to leave your viewers and your listeners with, is embrace your death. If we don't embrace our death, we cannot embrace our life. It's a coin. We can't push death away without dragging life away with it. The more I honor and embrace my death, the more alive I feel. So for all of your listeners and viewers, take a deep breath, embrace your death, and make grief a good friend.
I love that you're talking about embracing death and making death your friend, because we can have those conversations, as we've spoken about in this show, at various stages of life, and just befriending who you are now, so that when you've passed, others can honor you the right way and feel that tension just subside, so you're able to melt in. I love that we've spoken about this topic. It's so important. So if nothing else, I hope that from this podcast today that we've sparked conversations about death, and that we sharing uplifting moments we have within each other's lives, and sharing those things and moving past the regrets. I'm curious to know, Neil, if there's anything else that you would like to leave us with.
Just live fully. Just be yourself. As Stephen's brother said, that he needed to be himself more. So just live your life. You live your life your way and on your terms.
Well, I appreciate, Stephen, you joining us today. I trust that everybody here has taken one thing away or another. Drop into the comments if you have got your file sorted, if you are sorting, or if you're like, oh shit, I better get onto that soon. If you want some help in doing those things, I trust there's a specific person on your screen or in your ears right now talking to you, or who will be talking to you in a moment, who you can contact to help you to go through that, navigate that end of life experience. So Stephen, thank you again for joining us. We do appreciate you. And guys, until we see you next on Uplift in a fortnight, go out and live life, be you, and design the life you desire. You are worth it.
See you.